created a physical being ordained to manifest a spiritual reality. The proof of that is Jesus' resurrected body, which was physical yet spiritual flesh, if you will. On December 26, 1998, the Lord spoke to my listening heart. The next thing I shall teach you is of the resurrection of the just. In every generation some have held this hope in their hearts that perhaps they would see this day. But this day is now upon thee, and few are taking seriously my words concerning my promises. Teach my children plainly of my resurrection. All that you know, share with them, and I shall blow life upon your words, and they shall begin to take faith for them. Am I not even now bringing forth signs in the earthly realm to confirm that their heavenly inheritance is nigh? Be not holding back with any of my words that I quicken unto you, in case some should mock and show unbelief. Listen not to man, and fear not their faces. Fear only to be true to the word that I speak unto your heart, even though you feel it is too high for thee. I desire my people to begin to take faith for the resurrection that I have promised them. The sign in the earthly realm that the Spirit referred to in this word seems to me to be a sign in nature that Rosemary Garzon experienced recently. In October of 1998, she found that there was springtime in her yard. It was time for her fruit trees to come into dormancy and to go to sleep, and here was a crabapple tree in full bloom. Dormancy is a type of death, so the power of death was reversed. The sap was rising up in this tree instead of receding and going down. New life was so powerful in that tree as the sap rose up that it just burst forth with the glory of its life. Rosemary was so amazed that she went to check the orchard. She saw the magnolia tree full of blossoms, and then 3 pear trees in bloom. The Lord began to speak to her that even as there were seasons in the natural realms when one is supposed to have life, and when one is supposed to die, there are also seasons in the Spirit. When a season comes in the Spirit, He can overrule the natural season. These were for a sign unto us. No matter what season your body is experiencing, if you're in spring, as a young person, or in autumn, as in middle age, or in winter, as I am, it doesn't matter what season your land is in, when our Father sends forth the regenerating power of His Spirit into your land. Suddenly the flowers will begin to appear on your earth. The sap will begin to rise. It is the season of His appearing. Psalm 104:16 says, "The trees of the Lord are full of sap." When she checked that out, she found it meant the dew of His life. The trees of the Lord, and that's what we are full of the dew of His life. It reminds me of Psalm 110, 3 and 4. Thy people shall be willing in the day of thy power. I used to wonder, willing to do what? I found it was willing to let Him be God, willing to let Him have His way, willing to let your will be His. The verse continues, "In the beauties of holiness from the womb of the morning, thou hast the dew of thy youth. The Lord has sworn and will not repent. Thou art a priest forever after the order of Melchizedek." The priesthood of Melchizedek has to do with the resurrection body. They're coming at the same time. I'm sure you have experienced times when the Lord's Spirit is upon you in a measure that you can barely contain. You are aware that your flesh is too fragile to hold much more of His Spirit, and that you would need to be changed to hold the fullness. I believe the Melchizedek priesthood, the Feast of Tabernacles, and the resurrection must all go together. They are all an integral part of the fullness of God. The Lord spoke in the prophecy, "Am I not even now bringing forth signs in the earthly realm to confirm to those that their heavenly inheritance is nigh?" How do you like that? We now want to look into Hebrews 11, the faith chapter. Do these men of faith need resurrection, or do they have it? Verse 13 says, "These all died in faith, not having received the promises." Why could those mighty ones not have the promises? Verse 39 tells us, "And these all, having obtained a good report through faith, received not the promise, God having provided some better thing for us, that they without us should not be made perfect." They were not perfected. To display God's glory, they also need to have the same kind of body as Jesus had after his resurrection. At one time, my friend Faith was going through some Job's trials, and in the spirit she heard a giant chorus of saints from the other side of the river encouraging her on. They were saying, "Come on, you can do it. Don't give up." They were all rooting for her to overcome. They know, if we don't, that they can't come into their resurrection bodies until we do. And they have been waiting now for 2,000 years or more. The Old Testament saints can't receive the promises apart from us. To display God's glory, we need to have the same kind of body as Jesus had after his resurrection. Many of you are acquainted with Bill Britton's writings. His firstborn son was instantly killed when he ran into a tree on the way home from a meeting. He had fallen asleep at the wheel. It seemed like such a great loss, for he was so in love with Jesus. The Lord gave his father a poem about two armies. The Lord comforted him with the understanding that he had been sent on to that other army beyond the veil to be prepared, and that he would return in the appointed time. The Song of Solomon in chapter 6:13 speaks of this. "What will ye see in the Shulamite? As it were the company of two armies." The scriptures are clear that men will not be perfected one at a time when they die. It is a corporate work, and it shall come forth in this generation when the Lord has a prepared body on both sides of the veil. These shall be made one body in the resurrection. I understand that the Jehovah's Witnesses believe that the resurrection took place in 1914. If that is the case, we should have seen some people walking in their new bodies. When one asks them about that, they answer, they were raised spiritually, as in apart from the body. That is not the resurrection, friends, for the resurrection does not mean that we are raised spiritually. Resurrection means being raised bodily because the spirit has been made one with God and is qualified for the resurrection of the body. The purpose of resurrection is to raise the dead to stand alongside the living so that all may receive the promise at the same time. Now I want to talk about waiting for our adoption. Romans 8:22 and 23. For we know that the whole creation groaneth and travaileth in pain together until now. And not only they, but ourselves also, which have the firstfruits of the Spirit, we ourselves groan within ourselves, waiting for the adoption, to wit, the redemption of the body. I'll say that again. Our adoption, the redemption of our body. When many read this verse, they think of the manifestation of the sons of God and the power they shall show forth. But what is it saying about the adoption, the redemption of our bodies? It says this is what we are waiting for. Adoption means son placing, to be placed as a son, which is the great hope of the Christian who is going on to know the Lord. In today's society, we adopt someone else's child. But in the Israelite society, they adopt their own child. Why do they want to adopt their own child? The Jewish bar mitzvah explains this. When a boy of 12 takes this religious service, from that time on he leaves the care of his mother and is placed with his father, who will teach him the things of a man. When the Lord adopts us, he removes us from Mother Church and weans us from the breast, from drinking milk, and we come to the place where our Father will teach us the things of himself. We are placed as a son. We must polish up this hope that has become dim, that we should be adopted by our Father. Believe that it could happen in your lifetime to you. We are waiting for this adoption, this son placing, because it has to do with the redemption of our body. Many are looking for power, and that is part of it. But the big thing is the redemption of the body, because if you have that, you can do anything the Lord wants you to do. Some of the things that the great men of old had to say on this subject are very enlightening. Job believed, though worms would destroy his body, yet in my flesh shall I see God. And Daniel 12 chapter 2 in Rotherham says, And many of the sleepers in the dusty ground shall awake. These shall be to age-abiding life, but those to reproach and age-abiding abhorrence. Now I will share a word that the Lord personally spoke to me. I had for a number of years held the hope that I might be a part of the first resurrection and live through the millennium ministering to the hungry ones. There came a time that I had to give this hope back to the Lord and to lay it on the altar. I really don't know why. I said, Lord, it really doesn't matter if I come into your resurrection or not. I'm going to serve you as long as I have breath. If you take me by way of the grave, that's all right, because I know you're going to bring me back in your good time. Some years later, as I was praying as I was driving along, and suddenly I heard these words arise in my spirit. They sounded familiar, but I couldn't recall where I had heard